20 minutes before I got to go in. But I was reviewing the congressional testimony that Powell was being questioned on as far as monetary policy and everything else that's going on. And I finally came across what everybody was talking about as far as Powell talking about the average inflation rate. Now, if you are not familiar with this particular monetary policy, I believe that I am the only one on YouTube who has actually got this. This monetary policy that the Federal Reserve had started back in August of 2020, if I got that right, yeah, had completely changed the way that the Federal Reserve is looking at monetary policy. So now I'm going to do a review of this particular testimony. There's literally about a minute and a half of this, not even that much, that absolutely validates every single thing that I have been talking about. So let me just go ahead and start this up. I believe this is Mr. Hill from Arkansas, but this is about 2 minutes, 10 seconds into the video, and I left a link down in the description. Hopefully you guys can hear it okay.
17% higher for American households since President Biden was inaugurated back in January of 21.
I love how,
and yet in spite of
you know, before I even get started, I love how he immediately like throws Biden's name out there. Since Biden was elected, we got all this inflation, right? But this was something that the Federal Reserve planned for a very long time. So let me go ahead.
17% increase in cost, real wages have actually fallen 2%.
Can you guys hear this okay? Can you guys hear the congressman? Can the computer? Just type yes if you can before I get started. Hey, Hyder, what's happening? Good morning, everybody. What's up, Slick? Yes, okay, good. All right, let's continue on.
And over that period. So there's no doubt that inflation is the biggest issue facing American households. And in my view, there's three principal causing. Certainly we had supply disruptions, but we've had unprecedented fiscal policy.
Now, it's important to remember the difference right now. So if you're watching this video, you're trying to get into economics, trying to understand things, fiscal policy is when the government is spending, right? Their stimulus programs, whatever it is that the government's doing. Monetary policy is the Federal Reserve and the central banking system.
Laxity, you described it in a recent interview as unsustainable. But we also think that the Federal Reserve, in my view, and many people on this committee commented, should have reduced accommodation.
So right here, this is what he's about ready to talk about when the Federal Reserve should have reduced accommodations, but was causing inflation to be extra hot, extra long for an extended period of time. I must have said that statement 4,000 times 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
After the pandemic sooner. One of the things coincident with that, which is what I want to talk to you about, is that the FOMC announced in August of 2020 this flexible average inflation targeting framework right in the middle of the pandemic, which many of us didn't understand why the Fed would take.
Okay, they changed. He knew it. They went to average flexible inflation targeting, whatever the hell that means. Now, we have done so many videos talking about average inflation rate, talking about how it is that the Federal Reserve had changed the way they view things from a 2% target to a 2% average inflation rate over time. But it's important to remember that at times they are not going for the 2% target. Listen.
That decision then, but it would give you flexibility on the 2%. Saying the Fed could allow inflation to rise above 2% and stay there above that level for some time because the Fed...
Right. Rise above 2% and stay there for some time. Right. Now, this is the point of the whole thing. He calls it out. I mean, just absolutely right down to a T, that the Federal Reserve was not going for the 2% target, and everybody knew it.
The Fed had such challenges in getting the price level to 2%. That was a major shift in the Fed's approach.
Major shift in the Fed's approach, right? Everybody thinks that the Federal Reserve is still trying to conduct themselves the way that they always had. It's not the case anymore.
Do you think, in retrospect of now what we've witnessed over the past 4 years, that that was a mistake in hindsight to change that framework, and is it under review?
All right. Here comes the most important part. Now, to the whole thing, I mean, the rest of this you can kind of throw away because I'm just kind of babbling. But right now, Jerome Powell is about ready to expose the entire thing, right? That the fact that the Federal Reserve had run out of monetary policy, the interest rates, the Fed funds rate had hit the lower bound of zero. That means dropping interest rates was no longer an effective tool for stimulating the economy. The idea that the inflation expectation going into the future had fallen too low and they needed to get that expectation to rise. Listen to it.
So we said we would do a review on a 5-year basis.
Oh, here's the other thing. They're going to do a review on a 5-year basis, which means that this policy that he's about ready to talk about will not be reviewed again until the end of the year. Listen to him. He says it.
And that means we'll be starting that review toward the end of this year. So we really haven't started. I do think that the question you raised will be one of the questions we look at. But the bigger question...
The question that you raised, sir, right, Mr. Hill, will be one that we review in a year from now, right? At the end of the year, we'll review that. That's what he just said.
It really is. That change in the approach was really based on the fact that we'd had very low interest rates and very low inflation for a long period of time. And policy was always very close to the effective lower bound, so there wasn't any firepower for central banks. And so
there wasn't any firepower. They ran out of monetary policy.
It was a way to keep inflation expectations anchored at 2%, not have them slide down. Now we have entered a different period. The pandemic really may have changed that in a sustained way. We don't know that yet, but that's the big question we'll be asking ourselves is the effective lower bound to be thought of in a different way now? And if it were, that would have ramifications for our framework. But we haven't begun the review yet. It'll begin at the end of this year and probably end late the next year.
Isn't that incredible? I'm glad I finally caught this. Let me quiet that up. This is like 80% of my channel. Like, I talked about lumber a couple of years ago, but after the lumber story was coming to an end and it was boring to talk about, I focused in on monetary policy. I have been calling out the Federal Reserve on the average inflation rate over time for so long now. I feel like I'm the only one out there on the internet who has just been so adamant about this particular like 2% target that everybody believes that the Federal Reserve was shooting for. Right? And it was completely wrong. I mean, I even called out Time magazine for making up this entire story talking about how the 2% target was even created by the New Zealand central banker and blah, 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 blah. And then goes on to say how the Federal Reserve doesn't see anything other than 2% target. And it's completely BS. Right? That entire article was this completely crap. The Federal Reserve definitely sees things beyond a 2% target. They were shooting for above 2%. Inflation expectation was too low. They wanted to anchor it at 2%. And the only way to get it there was to actually create an inflationary scenario that people would actually believe. And they had to create that, yes. Right? I mean, this is something that we have been talking about since 2018. I mean, where is that damn speech at? I don't even know where it is right now. Bang, right? Isn't that it? Yeah, monetary policy for a low neutral interest rate world, right there. This is something that Mr. Hill should go read, right? Mr. Hill should go read this thing because right in there, he says, John Williams, that today we face an altogether different set of problems. I'm surprised I don't remember this, memorize this. Different problems stemming from a very low neutral interest rate. That is, the short-term real interest rate consistent with an economy operating at its potential alongside low and stable inflation. Ironically, the problem we need to solve these days is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. Right? Boom, problem solved. It's so amazing. Like, I don't get it. Like, how is it that the uneducated economist sitting in a 99 Ford Explorer waiting to go in to do a retail job is able to call out monetary policy better than just about anybody else? The guys inside are making fun of me. It's just like, I don't get it. Let me cruise up here a little bit and read some of these comments. I can't read them without my glasses. All right. Good morning from Ridgefield, Washington. Well, good morning. All right, as soon as deflation is in operation, QE is going to explode. Yeah, all right. Sure. Dishes, what you post, heard you just hit 500 subscribers. Congrats. No, she hasn't hit 500 subs yet, but she's getting close. All right, 476, right? Yeah, everybody's watching this live stream. Go over to Dishes Every Day and go hit the subscription. Get her up to 500 subscribers and she can monetize her channel. All right. UE, you are the only one I hear saying this. I am still seeing some people saying that the Fed will be lowering rates this year and have to with the election season coming up. Yeah. Well, they don't understand. Like if you don't know it, like if you literally just don't know what monetary policy is, in fact, you just like don't even know the difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy, then yeah, I could totally see where it is that you would like believe that all this crap, right? I mean, because you're just going to basically assume everything. Because if you don't know, you just assume. And this is the major problem that most people are facing right now, considering that, you know, the idea of what the Federal Reserve is doing with their monetary policy is not even close to what anybody is describing out there. Not a single person, like every article, every person, every economist, every news organization, everybody got it wrong. I don't get it. Like, I just don't get it. I don't know how the hell I did it, right? And it's literally from this speech. I mean, you can go back and look at the earliest of my channel. I mean, I did a review of the speech. I go back and watch those videos and I had no idea what I was talking about. Like, I go back and I was talking like just a bunch of just dumb stuff, right? Because I didn't know either, but I was reading this speech at the time. Shortly after it came out, and you can go and find it. I left like actually a playlist for it. And although it's kind of embarrassing, some of the things that I was talking about in there, I don't care. It was how I learned how this stuff is working. And, you know, really, I have to think about it. If your financial advisor doesn't know this, if your congressman doesn't know this, if your boss doesn't know this, if you're, you know, all these people don't know that it's an average inflation rate over time and can explain how come this is a major change to the way that the Federal Reserve is doing their monetary policy. I suggest you have them watch all of Uneducated Economist videos. Like every one of them. I got 1,700 of them out there. You watch them all, you'll know me. You'll know what this is too, right? Or you can join the channel. Like joining the channel, we'll discuss it. Come up with some questions and I'll explain everything you need to know, all right? All right, the propaganda is real. It's totally real. So what does all this mean for the future? Is the economy going to crash? Are we going to see inflation get further out of control and $50 minimum wage? I don't know. I mean, who can predict the future, right? All I'm getting at is that when you read this stuff and you listen to the Federal Reserve talking about their monetary policy, they ran into the lower bound of zero. They ran out of monetary policy. They knew that deflation was going to be the issue. Think about it. All the quantitative easing of 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve was looking for. I mean, it was a quadrupling of the balance sheet. I mean, this was like absolutely crazy to think about as far as money printing goes, but they still could not get the inflation that they were hoping for. I mean, this is like absolutely nuts, right? So now, how is it that you create this inflation? How do you create an inflationary scenario that is so obnoxiously high that the Federal Reserve could raise their Fed funds rate all the way up to 5% again in order to get their ammunition? It took an incredible amount of effort. And considering that in this speech from 2018, they talk about average inflation targeting, right? And I'm thinking, how are you planning on doing this, man? I mean, all the quantitative easing in the world failed to produce the inflationary scenario that you were looking for. Here we got it. Think about all the stuff that we had just experienced over the last 4 years. It's like, I don't know. Like, I guess I can't explain it in a few minutes. You have to watch all the videos. You have to go back and review all of the monetary policy. You have to read all those Fed speeches. I mean, I think about all the amount of diving into Fed data. How many, like, look at this, guys. This is incredible. I got it piled up here because I threw it in the back when Freddie got into the car. But look at this. I got a pile, like literally a pile of these speeches I threw back in here, right? I'm about ready to throw them out because I don't need them. I got them all on my computer, but I just threw them in the back seat. All this, Fed documents, every one of them. Who else is doing that for you? You know? All right, I got like literally like 5 minutes left. Yeah, I gotta go, guys. But this has been really fun. We got 206 people watching. I hope you enjoyed the review of this video. I mean, I don't know how else to expose what it is that the Federal Reserve is up to other than what it is that I've been doing. I've exposed the propaganda. I've tried to explain the monetary policies as best as I can understand it. I don't feel anybody else out there truly understands what it is that's going on with the Federal Reserve and their monetary actions. I think they really thought that the Federal Reserve had lost control, that they didn't know what to do with about all the inflation, that they screwed it all up, and yet it is right in line with everything that they have been talking about for years now. I mean, literally 20-something years now, these documents go back, talking about this monetary policy that we are exposed to, you know? So, again, maybe show this video to your financial advisor and have him explain to you what average inflation rate is. Or her, you know, whoever it is. Congressmen, they can't explain it. They don't even know. See, this is what gets me. Mr. Hill did not know why it was that the Federal Reserve was keeping interest rates extra low, extra long for an extended period of time, creating the inflationary scenario to make up for the past deviations from it. Like, literally could not understand why the Federal Reserve was doing that. And I'm thinking, do you not listen to the Fed, bro? Like, it was obvious, you know? All right, guys. I'm sorry to sound so cocky. I'm just wound up on coffee this morning. I hope you guys are cool. I'm not trying to, like, you know, chew you out or anything. If that's the way it sounds, I'm not trying to be that way. All right. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. I got to go into work. Uneducated Economist. You let me know. Oh, thank you for the $5 super chat. Oh, yeah, please go hit the like button. But I gotta go, guys. All right.